I am so excited to announce that iDriveAClassic is now sponsored by Adrian Flux, one of the UK's leading classic car insurers. If you're looking for classic car insurance, I've popped a link to Adrian Flux in the description box below. Hi guys, it's Steph from iDriveAClassic, and today I'm back with a car which you either owned yourself or you definitely know someone who owned one, because there were over 5 million sold and yet we barely ever see them today. It's the Peugeot 205. I have been so excited to show you this car for ages, and thankfully, even though it's December, we have beautiful weather. So we're going to kick off with this Peugeot 205 and have a quick look round before heading inside. The Peugeot 205 is definitely a classic. It's a car which definitely doesn't fit that mid-century chrome bumper stereotype classic, but it's definitely one of those cars which even non-car people think of when they think of smaller cars from the 80s and the 90s. From first car memories to the car that your family member or neighbour drove and you secretly wish that was yours, the 205 was, even only a few years ago, a cheaper starter classic, but is now commanding prices which mean that even a project is a considered purchase. But unlike many of the coveted classics you get in and just realise a romanticised hype, and by the way, by that I'm kind of giving a bit of a shade to the VW Beetle, the 205 feels far more promising even in its provenance. It was made from 1983 to 1998 and was not only crowned Car of the Decade by Car Magazine in 1990, it also won What Car's Car of the Year in 1984, a mere 12 months after launch, and it was only picked to the post for European Car of the Year by the Fiat Tipo. But let's face it, looking back, this is far more coveted. The 205 was an interesting change of tune for Peugeot, because as we discussed in the Citroën Visa video, Peugeot was the sensible older brother and really did the whole big saloon thing really well, and even though they had the smaller 104, it wasn't a patch on the 205 for memorability and iconic status, so really that's what people were buying into Peugeot for. And if we're being completely honest, Peugeot wasn't doing amazingly at the start of the 80s, and this is what really turned it around. Now, when we did the Peugeot video last year, we talked about how Peugeot in the late 70s had taken over Chrysler's European division, which meant that of course they then had the expertise to create a Super Mini, and it meant that when they came into the Super Mini market, they weren't just kind of going in absolutely blind with only what they'd learnt in the 104. They brought in so much expertise because, of course, when they did that buyout, they've got everything from kind of the roots stuff through to Simca, and it meant that they had a wide, varied range of experience to tap into to create the car. So once they'd done that takeover, that's when they started to kick off with the plans for the 205. Now, the earlier cars did use the X engine, which of course had been in that 104, but as production continued, they moved over to the TU series, which of course is what's in this. So I think they did that from about 1983. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you, don't like to drag these videos on forever, and there is so much to say on the 205 and cover all its history. So realistically, it feels like we could almost do a two-parter out of this because there's so much to talk about with the 205, and I feel like if I try and cram it all on in here, I'm going to massively undersell the car. So I thought instead I'd tell you a little bit more about this special edition. So this of course is a later 205 and therefore has the TU engine in, and the engine that we're testing today here is the standard that it was fitted with, and it's the 1360cc. It's a manual 5-speed, and I believe that was the only option for the Roland Garros special edition because that's all that's mentioned in the brochure. The fuel consumption, when driven sensibly, which is almost impossible to do in a 205, is not too dissimilar to the Nissan Sunny that we took out last week. We are predicted when driving around at 56 miles per hour to roughly be achieving 54 miles per gallon, 40 miles per gallon at 75 miles per hour, and around town we're looking at around 32.8 miles per gallon. Now, those speeds probably sound a little bit strange until of course you factor in the fact that in the tests, because this is a French car, the tests were done in kilometres and it's being converted into miles per hour for the UK brochure that I've had handy for making this video. Whilst the fuel consumption is the better end of average for the era, the The speed is where you start to see the fun in these 205s. We're promised a rather, well, for this size car anyway, hair-raising 110 miles per hour and a 0 to 60 of 10.6 seconds. Suspension is independent to front using McPherson struts with anti-roll bar and hydraulic shock absorbers, and to the rear it's independent of course. It uses trailing arms with torsion bars and of course that anti-roll bar in there as well. Brakes on this are split circuit, which is always good, with pressure limiting valve, and it's discs at the front, drum to the rear, and it's servo assisted, so you do get quite a decent sharp brake on this. These special editions seem to have everything as standard, including the sunroof that I'll demo and the now upgraded stereo, which I'll show you later in the video. Of course, at the time it would have been a digital stereo, radio stereo cassette with 4 speakers, but now I think it's just a bit of a CD player. The Roland Garros Special Edition was far more commonplace on the continent, but there were only ever 150 right-hand drive models ever made, making this quite a super rare example for the channel actually. Now, if you're wondering who Roland Garros is, he was one of the most famous early French aviators, who also lent his name to the stadium in Paris, which is home to the French Open Championships, the French equivalent of Wimbledon. Now, like Wimbledon, the French Open is a highly regarded summer event and a place where everyone wants to be seen and wants to attend, and it was this feeling of attainment and really hitting that upper echelon that Peugeot wanted to emulate with the special edition. The interior and finish is so different to your standard 205, and the body is finished in metallic green, which was found nowhere else in the Peugeot range, and the special colour scheme was carried through, as you'll have seen on the walk around, with the front and rear bumpers as well, and the rear lower panels and tailgate panel all being matched in. It was also sold with dished alloys, standard and double pinstripe coach lines to add a bit of pizzazz, or as the marketing material says, a touch of refined style. The interior is special too, and you'll have spotted it when we looked inside, and you'll note the leather and cloth seats have been put into this, which isn't something that's standard, and in my opinion they're really high quality, and the high quality that they claim to be, because despite the high mileage on this car they still look in reasonably fine condition, but I'll show you this in a little bit more detail when we hop in. So overall, here we are, the Roland Garros Special. It's a great special edition, we've got a good example today, and I'm excited to show you more. So let's hop inside. Getting into the car, I felt like I got a lot of surprises, because I know that some people, especially Peugeot 205 aficionados, are going to say to me, no, it's not like that at all. But I thought the car was going to be really, really simple inside. So when I came to open the window, I was looking for a manual window winder, and I was really surprised to note that they were electric. So it's electric in the front and just those little clips to open the rear back windows. Now, I don't know if that is something that was only put onto these as a special edition, but I was really taken aback that we would find electric windows on a car like this. And as well as that, that wasn't where all the surprises stopped, because as you may have spotted when we were doing the walk around, the interior on this is leather. Now, yes, this is a special edition, so of course this is only within this particular car, but it must have been quite a high quality leather as well, because this is worn quite well, because of course we are on nearly 100k on the clock on this. And these seats have lasted very, very well. And as well as that, all the door cards are trimmed in this leather as well. It's got these matching seat belts. So it's a really attractive proposition as soon as you open the door. Now, when we have a look at the controls in front of us, it's all very well laid out, and in fact I thought it was going to feel a lot more dated than it does. It feels a lot more current than some of the mid-90s stuff you take out that feels like it's way past its prime before it's even hit half the mileage that this car is on. So over on our left hand side, we've got just above the glove box, we've got this indent, which is kind of like a pocket. You could get a fair bit of stuff in that. Come down, we've got a glove box there. Then coming in front of us, so we've got the centre console to talk you through what we've got here. So at the top, you've got this, and it's really sticky to open, this little almost pocket of space with a little lid on. Again, do really like that you can hide all of that away and you can just pop all your bits and pieces there. Then we come down to the 3 dials that control our heating. So you've got there for your direction, you've got the speed, and you've got the level of heat there as well. Coming down into these three buttons here, hazards, rear screen and fog. Coming down, you've got another little pocket of space here. This one's the ashtray with your cigar lighter. You've also got your digital clock there and a replacement stereo. So I assume this probably would have had a cassette player when it was new. And then just down at the bottom, you've got yet another pocket of space. And I think this is something that hot hatches do really well, and that smaller cars of this era do really well, is that they always seem to have lots of little cubby holes and lots of little space. But I guess that is a little bit of a trade-off, because in some of your hot hatches and some of your smaller cars, you do have these door pockets on the doors, whereas in this we don't. So I guess that would almost take the space of, or take the place of, those door pockets. Now, when we look in front of us, you've got the steering wheel. This would be a special edition. I assumed from the promotional brochure I'd looked at that this was supposed to be trimmed in white. So when I spotted it, I thought that it had been replaced. But it says Roland Garros in the middle, so I assume that it must have been interchangeable. So over here we've got all our dials. So as you can see, you've got your oil light there, fuel gauge, speedo, rev counter, and then you've just got your temperature gauges there over there as well. And then in the middle of it, you've got just a strip with all of your warning lights on there. And that's pretty much all the in terms of your stalks, again, they're all very conventionally laid out. To your left, we've got the horn, the indicators and the lights, and then on the right there you've just got all your wash and wipe functions, and it is twin speed wipe on this, which is great. Now, as well as that, I wanted to show you the sunroof because it was mentioned in the brochure, so I guess it's definitely worth mentioning here. So as you can see, it's very clumsy for me to show you. It's very, very heavy to pull it back. That is something that I will give this car. It does feel a lot better made than some of the other smaller cars you take out, where it feels a bit tinny and it feels a little bit like the plastic's going to break off in your hand. I would say the majority of stuff in this car doesn't feel like it's about to break off. There are a couple of little bits that I thought, oh god, but this sunroof is it's been made out of real heavy duty plastic, so you can get that open quite easily. And then just in front of that, and I can't work out to put these on, so apologies that I can't show you, but it's daylight anyway, we've got what looks to be a map light and an interior light there as well. And I thought they were quite clever because they moved about. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what we've got inside here. I'm going to get that engine started up for you so you can hear how she sounds, do a quick walk through the gearbox, and we'll take her out for a drive. Now, this is on manual choke, but we're not going to need to use any choke because she's driven here today, so she's already quite warm. Oh, I can feel a speeding ticket coming on. Ooh. Honestly, I don't know what it is about rev counters, but they probably pushed me over the edge. Right, we're going to shoot it from the back as well, so you can hear what it sounds like from the back. The gear changes in this are so nice. It's one of the nicest boxes I've had out in ages. So it's really simple, exactly as you'd expect. And the nicest thing on this as well is we've got fifth, and even to get it into reverse, just dead simple down there. Now let's go up through that box. We're in first gear to start. And as quick as that, we're up into fourth gear. Now, because we're doing just a bit of residential and town driving today, we're probably not going to be able to get right up into fifth gear. Now, I knew this wasn't going to be a slow car, but I wasn't quite expecting something that would bring out the 21-year-old driver in me. So we've got the TU3 engine under the bonnet in this, 1360. Really popular engine. It was used in a lot of stuff, and I don't think they stopped making the TU engines until what? It was either 1991 or 2000. So it's either 1999 or 2001, and I can't remember which, but I know they made them for a long old time. It came out in 86, but because it was used across quite a lot of stuff, it's still relatively easy to get the parts for, and knowledge of the engine is kind of commonplace rather than you trying to work it all out yourself just with a few books and bits. Now, I was talking earlier about how this car had surprised me. Another thing that surprised me on this is the suspension is absolutely smashing. So even as we're taking all these potholes and bumps and all the rest of it, it's managing it all relatively well. And we're getting, especially for a small car like this, a budget small car, we're getting a relatively smooth experience. The roll as we go around the corner just isn't there. It's really sticking to the road in a way that, I don't know, that you don't always feel on some of these smaller cars. As you can probably hear, it's relatively quiet inside. There's a slight buzzing coming from the back, which we may not be able to hear when we play the video back. You may be able to, you may not. But to the front, none of the plastic is rattling, and realistically, it's quite a smooth experience. Now, of course, I drive a small car. I drive a mini metro. And so to compare the two, because I guess there was a point in time when you would have, nowadays you would not be able to put them in the same price bracket, but back at a certain point in time you would have been able to put these two in the same price bracket and you would have had a bit of a choice. Now, the one thing I do prefer with the Metro is you do get a bit more room inside around you as the driver, whereas in this Peugeot it does feel a little bit more compact. Now, despite the headrests, which actually are a nice safety feature, because of course you don't get those, well, not like that anyway, you don't get those on a lot of the hot hatches that you take out. These are actually quite sturdy. We still do have fantastic visibility. The seating position is great, we're seated quite high up. And overall, it is just such an enjoyable, easy car to drive. The steering is pretty light, much lighter again than I expected. We've taken out some stuff recently which has surprised me in terms of being quite heavy or quite light. This is one of the lightest things we've taken out. I would say where to sit in terms of other things, Metro is perhaps slightly lighter, but there's not much in it. Plastic in this is certainly sturdier, and as you take it for a drive, so at first when you see it, it can feel quite unassuming, but once you get into it and you start driving it and you start to experience it and you feel how quick you are off the lights, because of course 0 to 60 in this I think is around, I know 0 to 62 because obviously it's all done in kilometres with it being French, is 10.6 seconds. So what's 60 going to be? Just short of that, maybe 10.5 seconds. So it's a jolly quick car. As soon as you put your foot down, it goes, and it really does bring out the Larry driver in you. I'd say that's probably a negative rather than a positive. I just want to race this thing. It's incredible. So yeah, overall, fantastic car. I can definitely see why these have shot up in price. They're really fun. It's definitely something as well that you could drive daily. Like, it doesn't feel unusable. It doesn't feel like, a lot of people moan that when you get in smaller stuff it feels quite uncomfortable. This doesn't feel uncomfortable. And it doesn't feel unsafe either. So some stuff you get in from the 80s and 90s and you think, God, if I have an accident, I'm not going to have my legs at the end of it. But this feels just a little bit sturdier than some of the other stuff. But of course, Peugeot was always a safe name. And for me, when I think of Peugeot, I always think of stuff like the 205, and it's been a real honour to take this out today. It's a fabulous example, and to say that it's on nearly 100,000 miles on this clock, I think it looks pretty damn good too. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been a right old laugh taking you out, and hopefully I can get back to where we're parked without picking up any speeding tickets. Now, until next time, take care and drive safely.